Hey, Tara, welcome back to our little podcast.
Hey, yay, we're back.
We want to say welcome to those of you just joining us for the first time, and welcome back for those of you who continue to listen to us. Thank you very much. And please make sure that you like and share this. There's someone out there who just might enjoy this podcast as much as you are.
And it really helps us to get to more people too. So, we appreciate you taking that time. Go out there, let people know, even on our YouTube, if you want to come and watch us and all the shenanigans that we do as we're talking, we would love to see you on our YouTube channels.
Totally. So today's topic, it's going to be good. So Tara had a trip to Vegas. And of course, when you go to Vegas, what do you have to do? You have to go and visit a haunted museum.
Yes, yes, you do. And you have to drag everyone with you. And including your husband, who has no interest in any of this whatsoever, but he's a good sport. And so we went to the Zak Bagans Haunted Museum. Yes, yes, we did. We went.
And what did you think about it?
I'm torn. I'm really torn. It wasn't what I expected, I guess. And being a medium and having all the feels, I was really hoping to have more feels. Um, I do not fake anything, so I'm not going to pretend like I feel something if I don't feel anything. So here's what I'm going to say. I was disappointed that you had to pay an extra 30 US. We're Canadian, so that's an extra 210 to go downstairs into the basement to see the pentagram that was down there. I can't even remember the story because once they said that I wasn't going to be able to go down there unless I paid extra money, I lost interest, right?
Yeah.
So we couldn't go down into the basement. There was a lot of stuff in there, a
Mhm.
lot of stuff in there. And I couldn't even keep up. Like, as a matter of fact, they whipped us through that front section, which was so interesting, so fast that I I missed like the whole front portion of it. And they were so busy taking the RIP, get it? Not VIP, RIP people through because they included the RIP people in our tour.
So
So we
you
got
couldn't walk through on your own and just explore and enjoy you were
no,
like literally part of
on
a
a
tour.
tour. On a tour. And I mean, they that's the least of it. I mean, there was a lot. They had this smoke that was through the whole thing. It was a 2-hour tour. And so you're in that constant fake smoke. So my throat got raw. I don't know. There was only I know we're going to talk about one thing in particular, and we're going to come back and talk about some other things I saw in there. There was only one place where I actually got full on hardcore, like, oh, sweet goddess vibes.
Ooh.
And that was in the room. There was two rooms. You'd walk into one, it was like a doctor's office,
Mhm.
right? And that was Dr. Death. Now I
Or
can't say his name, Dr. Kevorkian.
Kevorkian.
Yeah,
Dr. Kevorkian's van.
was in the next room. So when we walked in there, we didn't know it was in the next. At least I didn't, because I didn't do any research on the place. It just sounded fun and like, please let me pick up some cool stuff. So
Right.
when we went in there and we went into that room, he had the creepiest pictures that he'd drawn, paintings he'd drawn that were his, and they were creepy as fuck. And so
Really?
I was like, oh, this is so interesting. And I totally forgotten he even existed. Like he was so off my radar. And everyone was in there, and they had a video. So what happens is Zach comes on this video and tells you a little bit of something, something, and it was so played up for a lot
Yeah.
of stuff that I could barely cope. But he talked a little bit, and then they talked about, the stuff that, this doctor did and etc. And then they're like, okay, but get ready because he was the traveling death doctor and all this, and going into the next room. And when they open the door, you can look into the room. It looks like a garage,
Mhm.
and the van's in there. And it is the real van. Zach has purchased the real van.
Mhm.
And when I went to step from this fake doctor's room to that van,
Mhm.
I had the full, not only body chills, full body chills, but
Mhm.
I had that cold energy that goes like in. And I was like, oh, this is a lot of energy here.
See,
And I,
this doesn't surprise me though, because there was people who died in the van, and you and I talked to dead people. So that doesn't surprise
I
me.
haven't felt anything anywhere else yet. And we'd been around some stuff. And so
Yeah,
I was
but
kind of
like
like,
I'm
oh,
like, yeah, okay, I get this. But again, then we're getting into the hyped up, is it really haunted on the dolls and the different things and the serial killer stuff that's there. But
the
okay, so
serial killer stuff was kind of cool though, not gonna lie.
tell me more about the full chills. Like what did you see anyone? Did
So
you
I so immediately I kind of went, because remember I'm there with four other people. So and there's a tour with us. So four other people with me and then these other people. So I took a deep breath in and
okay,
I just did my little white light and made sure that I was just kind of cool. And I walked in and I looked into the van and there was three just no word of a lie, just kind of floating bodies. But below those floating bodies, and this is not Zach making floating bodies with like a projector.
okay,
It's
I was gonna
me
get you to
seeing
clarify.
energy, right,
Okay.
moving around there. And then no one to share it with. There was like no one for me to go, because Mike would have been like, uh-huh. And the other three just are not quite
Into
into
that.
it either.
Yeah,
So they really just went because I wanted to go.
totally.
And then below that, though, but there were three bodies floating. Okay, a female, a younger male, and then an older male.
Okay.
I couldn't give you any kind of description of them. It just was floating in this van, and it was kind of dark in the room. Not gonna lie, it was, and plus that stupid smoke he thinks is so cool. Anyway, but there was two pictures at the bottom in frames of two people that Dr. Kerr, whatever his name is, helped cross over.
Right.
Right? One was a woman and one was a younger man. And I didn't see those until I'd seen the first things and looked down. So I felt like that spirit energy, if I had
Mhm.
tapped in, we could have been having a full-on conversation. We
Right.
could have been having, I didn't love the energy of the older man. And so that made me kind of, when I stepped back, because I did step back and then I stepped almost right back out of the room because it was just a lot.
Mhm.
I thought that maybe that was the doctor himself attached to that space, right?
Mhm.
And so was not having conversations, was not opening up to that because there was a lot of other stuff going on in that house.
Mhm.
So that was the biggest place I felt something. One of the coolest things, Nan, though, was they had a celebrity room. So the celebrity room had, and it blew me away. It had Michael Jackson's. Oh, I'm trying to think of what it had of Michael Jackson's. I can only remember, this is so dumb. I can only remember the framed picture of his bedroom they had. And all I remember is looking at this framed picture of the bedroom where he died, where the doctor sat in the chair and monitored him and gave him all these extra drugs to facilitate whatever Michael needed at the time. And I remember looking at that picture and being so disappointed that his room looked like my parents' bedroom from like the 1970s. This is Michael Jackson's bedroom? It looked, and I don't, that I hyper focused on that, but they had some cool stuff. They had, and this was cool, Patrick Swayze. Now, I mean, I'm going to say this, but you're going to be like, how is that cool? It had Zach bought Patrick Swayze's tooth, I guess in auction. Yes. Yes, he paid,
Okay.
I think the tour lady told me it was $6,000 with the casing and all this stuff. And I was like, okay. So they had that on display. But what really caught my attention was all the crystal wands. He had a little wizard figurine, and bigger pieces of crystal, and orb. And this was stuff that Patrick apparently had purchased to try to help in his healing when he found out he had cancer.
Oh, wow.
And then his wife, Lisa, eventually auctioned all of this off, including his chemo wig, the wig he had when he lost all his hair. But she auctioned a lot of this off, and this is what he bought. And I thought that is a very interesting thing. And I think we should get into that story about Patrick and his journey with healing, because he
Okay,
really,
but the tooth, I'm still not understanding how his tooth ended up there. Like,
because
wow.
he sold his tooth. It was up for auction, so I guess that's a collector's item, right? And Zach is collecting all sorts of stuff, And so that's what he collected. I did find when I did a little bit of research into this for one of our episodes that will come up, is I did find the actual items on auction. They're
Was there
still
more?
up. I didn't see the tooth though. The tooth wasn't there, and there was a deck of cards missing. He had a deck of medicine cards,
Hmm.
oracle cards. Yeah, and that wasn't in Zach's array of things.
Did you see the Dybbuk box?
Yes,
Okay. Was it creepy? Did you get really like crazy creepy vibes off of it?
absolutely not. I was annoyed. I'm not
Really?
gonna lie. They hyped it all up. They did this whole thing. And that's the problem. When you're someone like me or you or anyone that actually works intuitively and feels energy for real and et cetera, the hype attached to everything, like Zach would never come back to this room again because the doll touched him, or the divination box. Like he has a whole Post Malone video, like of him and Post Malone having like a drink or something and going, and he decided to open the divination box and all this happened, and Malone runs out of the room, and then Post Malone goes on Joe Rogan's podcast, and I'm like, I'm not saying that Post Malone and stuff didn't have an experience, but it feels too much hype and it's not scary for me. It's kind of like annoying.
Oh,
So when we
yeah.
got to go into the room and they're like, don't touch it, they ended up putting it in this massive box, so you can't touch it or anything.
Mhm.
And with all due respect, it gave me nothing, like big fat zero, like nothing. And this is supposed to be, I don't know what's happening to you, sweetheart, but you're having
Right.
all sorts of spirits coming through. If you're not watching this live, your hand's got like flashing orbs and lights happening.
Like I have a light that I use so that there's some illumination when we're recording the video portion that we put on YouTube. And I accidentally set my hand on the button with listening to you, which turned it off. And then I was like, "Eek, turn it on. No one's gonna notice." But there we go.
Star has to say it. Um, so so that box really was not anything that I found. Like, I didn't find anything creepy, but I don't think anyone did, including the 3 people that bought the RIP, right?
Like,
Just kind of walked through it. I mean, there was some interesting, you read some interesting stuff. The other thing I found really interesting and that you and I are going to do a deep dive into is the James Dean car.
yes, I'm super excited to go in deep on this research on this one. And
And
I need to
this,
find out if more of Patrick Swayze's teeth have been given up for auction, because this is so bizarre to me why his wife would auction off teeth. But I digress. Let's talk James Dean.
the James Dean has always been very interesting to me. I've always been interested in, and of course, again, not on my radar for many years now. But I did read up on it years and years and years ago about how the car was passed on and passed on and passed on. And the story to this, which I'm not going to get into here, was just so cool. And they have a piece of it. They have, I believe it's the only piece of the car they could find that could be authenticated.
Oh,
Um, yeah, and it was it's just so cool that, and okay, wait a minute. It's not cool necessarily what happened, but there is something to this story that is very intriguing and pulls you in. It's like, are you kidding me? That happened? Are you kidding me? That happened? That is no way that happened. So there is a kind of line of us going down this, like, James Dean died in his car, so and so and so, and then this happened, and then that happened, and then this happened,
well,
and
if
that's
you're listening now, our very next podcast is going to be about James Dean and his haunted car or cursed car.
cursed car. I think it's going to be a cursed car. I just feel like, and you know how I feel about curses, but I feel like that's the right word for it. So again, we move into different, different spaces, and the serial killer aspect, I found that super interesting. Super
Yeah.
interesting. Not frightened. Didn't feel any serious energy except for with Ed Gaines.
Oh,
That's the only one that I felt energy, like super energy with. And for the love, he had some cool stuff in there.
but
Um,
what did he have of Ed Gaines there?
masks. Remember,
Oh,
he was the
oh,
clown. Wasn't Ed Gaines the clown? No, that was John Wayne Gacy. Okay, I'm off. Ed Gaines was the one. The Ed Gaines creeped me out too, but it was John Gacy. That's the one with the mask and it. My sister needs to be here and help me with this. It was the masks and stuff, but I was so busy reading everything of all these different killers and stuff, and they had like nail clippings and stuff. It was weird, but I was so busy reading about it, I never like really got the full whole thing because then they kicked you out. They're like, okay, next room, let's go. So,
Oh,
but the clown masks, and I can't tell if that's because of his energy or if that's because of my fear of clowns, right? Like I couldn't tell, but that creeped me out. But here, Ed Gaines, there was an actual room dedicated to him where they had like they had a fake loft upstairs where they had someone hanging, and that room creeped me the fluff out. That room energetically felt awful to me.
wow.
But again, white light, all that good stuff. But there's stuff in that room, and they had the weirdest thing. Like they had a double-headed, like cow or something in there, which I don't have any idea why it was in there. But anyway, they had the actual shovel and the actual hooks and all this stuff. It was, and they had this big cauldron that he did stuff. Oh my God,
Oh,
that was interesting to me. Again, you get pushed through so quickly that you listen to this video of them talking about it, then you read a couple things here and there, and then you move into the next space, and you're like going. But then we got to some interesting stuff. Okay, another really interesting one was Natalie Wood.
see, that's always fascinated me.
So Natalie Wood, for those of you that don't know, and I don't have all the documentation because all of a sudden I'm just remembering things I saw there, but I don't
Yeah.
have, she was married to Robert Wagner, Christopher Walken. They were all on this. Well, she wasn't married to Robert and Christopher at the same time, but they were on this yacht, and her, Christopher Walken, Robert Wagner, and they had this big fight, and then she drowned. She fell off the boat, or she something. And they had this really interesting video of the captain that was on that yacht. And he
Oh,
apparently was fairly good friends with Natalie. And they had him on when he was much, much older because this
yeah.
happened. I mean, Robert Wagner, I think, is in his 90s now.
Yeah.
Sure. So, and Natalie Wood was in Rebel Without a Cause with James Dean.
Oh, is the curse like tied in?
Oh no, baby, but we're gonna look into that. But going back to this, she was good friends with this captain, and when this captain called Zak Bagan for some reason, I can't even remember. It was something happened, and he was so devastated by Natalie's loss. He kept saying it should never have happened. It should never have happened. And I keep thinking to myself, Christopher Walken needs to leave a note on his deathbed about what happened that night, because I know what I feel happened that night for real. And I
Mhm.
felt the energy was so powerful in there, but I'm not going to, claim anything on here or anything, but that was they had pieces of the boat, and they had, a few things here
Wow.
and there of Natalie's. But in that same room, they had some Titanic stuff,
Did they have the
memorabilia.
creepy Robert the doll?
They did. They absolutely did. That doll is the most awful, just awful doll. I don't know if it's because it just looks awful or if it was the energy coming off the doll, but I walked out of the room. I was like, nah, not for me. So why don't
Oh,
you tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about Robert?
he is like almost child size. Like he's not a small doll like you would buy at the store nowadays. And he's under lock and key, and he's said to be very, very haunted. He's got a very homemade sort of fabric face that's really,
So
really.
creepy.
We are going to be starting our Instagram account, Spirits, Angels, and Guides. Oh my, we'll put the link below. Um, and you kind of look at him and you think, oh, he's kind of simple, but his eyes are like black hard beads, and he wears this sailor suit. And he used to be, let me see, I think he's 100, yeah, 116 years old. He's one of the old-fashioned straw dolls, and he's supposed to be haunted by a malevolent spirit. And the original owner, that he was Robert Eugene Otto, used to blame all the mischief on this doll after he was given to him. And so he's been taken on all of this. They say that this malevolent spirit that is attached to him, but whoever kind of comes to him and insults him in any way, they have tragedy befall them in some form or fashion, from breaking bones to car crashes to heart attacks. And so it's very interesting because I know the museum really pumps this up. I mean, for all of you out there who are listening, if you don't know, Zak Bagans has his own Hollywood show. I think it's called Ghost Encounters or Ghost Hunters. Hold on.
He's got several of them though. Like he's not
Yes,
just
he does. Yeah, so he's got one about haunted items and all these different things like that. The original story is there's some debate around his origin. And so some claim that he was gifted to his late owner, Robert Eugene Otto, from his grandfather in 1904. But locals recall a more sinister backstory. And they claim that the straw filled toy was given to the young Otto by one of the family's young maids who hexed it in retaliation for wrongdoing that was done to her. Like there, we could probably do a whole episode just on this creepy doll. And that he was really never intended to be a doll in the first place. So is it voodoo, hoodoo? I don't know.
Oh,
Yeah, so it goes pretty deep. And the there's one person who claims that it was a historian that says that he was most likely meant to be part of a window display. So either way you look at it, I don't know, the conspiracy theory, it's a little bit more interesting if you think some housekeeper who was wrong done gifted the good doll, but I don't know.
it's weird though, is that the way they had it set up in the room made me feel like it was part of the Titanic. Like it had come off the Titanic just because the way it was kind of set up was that. Was there any connection to the Titanic?
No, I think they just put him there because he has his little sailor suit.
Ah, okay. And the same
Yeah,
reason that I guess Natalie Wood and stuff is in there because it has to do with a
water,
boat. Mm.
water and boats and stuff.
You know, we should do a story on haunted dolls. We could do Annabelle, we could do
Yeah.
so what else is there about Robert?
So this young boy, young Otto, was so enamored with this doll that he named the doll after himself. And
Oh,
he put his
lovely.
yeah, he put his own clothes on the doll. And he was so close to this doll that his parents would hear him whispering to it. And they thought that this was totally normal until they claimed there was a deep voice answering back one day.
Oh dear.
Yes. So, again, we start to get into some of like the deeper history around this, and we could totally deep dive. But they go on to say basically that strange things started to happen around the house. According to legend, his parents would wake up in the middle of the night only to find their boy screaming and surrounded by overturned furniture that apparently the doll did. And then the doll started to become more malicious as he'd mutilate toys. And Otto would cry, Robert did it. So I guess he called the doll Robert rather than Otto. I correct me earlier on what I was saying there. So they say once a plumber who had been hired to make repairs around the home claimed to hear children's laughter, but there was no one home at the time, just the doll. And
Oh.
yeah, and that he said he would see in the window the doll move from one side of the window to the other, seemingly on his own. Objects would move that he was trying to fix. It would end up in another room. So eventually the young boy Otto grew up and moved away, and he studied at the Academy of Fine Arts. And he met his wife Anne, and then he brought the doll to his childhood home. Uh, and he called the home the artist house. And apparently that house is haunted as well. And I know that I've read in past articles that his wife was like, the doll has to go or me. Like, this is just, the doll was so creepy, and he still had this such tight kinship to this doll that it's just next level strange. He even designed a special room in him and his wife's home in the attic, complete with furniture, toys, and a teddy bear. And so the wife, after this room in the attic was built, she insisted that that doll stay locked up in the attic.
Man,
And apparently, um, the doll wasn't fond of this, and he would repeatedly weasel his way out and situate himself in a chair facing in the upstairs window where he could be seen by passers-by. Like, so the locals would be like, we saw the doll, he's reappearing and disappearing, and he's following us, and he's watching us. And so there's like this whole deep dive that you can do, and needless to say, Zak ended up with this doll in his museum.
this is true. And I think Halloween's coming up, baby. And I think we should do a whole series of like spooky things like that.
Yes, I think we should too. I
Dolls.
think,
Okay, let's talk about one more doll
okay.
that was in this house that I took a picture. I didn't take a picture of this doll. You're not allowed to take pictures in there. We weren't allowed to take pictures, but there was one more doll. Now I'm going to read straight from Zak Bagans, the Haunted Museum Facebook page, okay? Because it's just easier for me. When I
Okay.
saw this doll, did nothing for me. But then I kept thinking about this doll. Lily, Lily, Annabelle. No, Lily, Lily, Annabelle. No, Robert. No, Lily. And it kept coming up and coming up. So I looked this up. Lily is a haunted doll from Salem, Oregon, who is now a full-time resident at the Haunted Museum. An antique stealer found her hidden in an antique chest, then took her into his house. He began having reoccurring nightmares about a little girl who had a very bad accident. He said the details of the nightmares were too disturbing to tell. He then put the doll in his antique shop, where a little girl came in with her parents and spoke to Lily for 3 hours straight, catching the attention of everyone in the store. I am sure, because whose parents lets you sit there and talk for 3 hours to a doll? Anyway, I'm just saying. The little girl was speaking to her as if Lily was a real child, and then told the staff working at the antique shop that Lily is a little girl that was subjected to extreme violence.
Oh.
When Zak, good old Zak Bagans, why do I always feel like I'm talking about Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit when I say Bagans? When Zak acquired Lily, an older woman, as seen in the photo, had to physically touch Lily to get her down from where she was perched high inside a case. At that time, the older woman looked flushed and began to panic. She repeated over and over, I must wash my hands. I must wash my hands. She then was immobilized as she began to have sharp pains in her stomach. Then it says Lily is a 1800s German doll with real human hair.
Oh,
Zak.
creepy.
And then here we go with what Zak felt. Does Zak claim? I've never even looked into Zak. I don't do my research, people. You just get whatever Tara throws at you. But is Zak like a medium? Is he an intuitive? Like, what does Zak claim to be
Um,
beside annoying?
on a few of the episodes that I've watched, he claims to be intuitive.
Lily is an 1800s German doll with real human hair. Zak felt an immense energy the moment he saw the doll, and both parties agreed it was fate that she now resides at the Haunted Museum in Las Vegas.
Together forever.
So then all these people went to the museum, saw Lily. A few hours later, I took a nap and she was in my dreams. Oh, I found her. I talked to one of the owners of her one time when I was lucky enough to be in the store with him, and he said he couldn't sleep, so he brought her back. He said his dreams felt so real it borderline drove him mad. I don't think she's a bad spirit, though, just troubled. I'd go visit her all the time as a teen, young adult. Her eyes move on a day to day because they aren't secured anymore. You can't tell by the pictures, but they are still in there. Sometimes I would go and one eye would be looking directly out and the other would be sunk. It was cool. I hope to go see her again in her new home someday.
Are they glass eyes
I
or?
don't know what the hell that even meant. I went last year. I felt really connected with Lily to the portrait. Felt like she followed me to the point it felt like she followed me to my hotel room. But here's the thing. As much as I cannot get into the whole like extra that gets put into, trying to convince people of this, that, and the other, I could feel like Lily, and the name just kept resonating and resonating over and over. I did not have any bad dreams, people. Spirits don't get to do that to me. I didn't have any of that, but the name just kept going and going and going. And I'm gonna do, if we do a haunted doll session, I really hope Nan's gonna say yes. Um,
Yes.
good stuff. Then I'm gonna kind of do a little bit of a deep dive in more into that, and a little bit more into Annabelle, because I feel like even though Annabelle's been talked about a lot, it will be a cool to add Annabelle in, and any other haunted dolls that we can find. That would be kind of fun and
Absolutely.
cool.
We'll deep dive on the dollies. And you know, it's interesting because I seem to recall reading something years ago that dolls were originally created to hold the souls of people to carry them to the afterlife.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I've been trying to find that article that I read, and it kind of makes sense when you like if you think even back to Egyptian times. What?
Okay, one more thing about Zak Bagans was that in the front room, the one I said I didn't get enough time to really spend in, there was two dolls in a glass case. And in the glass case of these two dolls, had real hair. The mother had lost her two babies, and I cannot remember how for love or money, but I'm going to find out. And she had these dolls made, and to her these dolls were her children, and so she carried these dolls everywhere for the rest of her life. These dolls were her children, and she had their hair put on them and everything. I gotta remember to go and look that one up for you guys. That one gave me the heebie-jeebies too,
Totally. Yeah.
because that's sad
Yeah.
that she lost her children, and then she felt, because that also goes into a point of mental health,
Right.
right? She had these dolls made and to be her children. It was sad. I gotta remember that one. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Egyptian. We're
That
talking
is it.
Egyptians.
No, well, I was thinking, they had special vessels and vases and even, dolls to carry people to the afterlife.
True, true, absolutely true.
So we need to deep dive. We're gonna do that. Maybe we'll do dolls after a couple more episodes. We'll do
We should
that.
also do, and listen to Nan and I hash this all out so you guys can see what's coming up. But we're going to be in Sedona just before Halloween. Boop. And maybe we ought to do a UFO episode while we're out there.
That would be fun. That would be fun. All right. So for everyone listening, stay tuned. James Dean's Cursed Car is coming up next. And as always, thanks for listening. Please come back and join us. If you think anyone's going to get something out of this episode, be sure to share it in whatever capacity, on whatever platform you listen, or even on YouTube.
I feel
As
like we're
always,
threatening them. Be sure to share it.
sure to share it. We
Chop,
are
chop.
grateful for all of you. So thank you. And Tara, I have the best time. You just make my day when we do these podcasts.
I love you, Nan. So, Nan Brady, Nan. I can't stop saying it now. You're my Lily now. Nancy Christine Brady, Spirit Essence by Tara Diana. Go find us on all our platforms, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye.
Hi, everyone.